Well, good morning again. It's Rob from Inspire, and it's great to be with you for a few minutes just to talk through this video, which sits alongside the other video we've made on business planning. This one is specifically on the aspect of planning for the current crisis. So you really need to see them both side by side, and alongside each there is a written worksheet that you can work through as well as part of this process. So let's look at planning for the current crisis. There's some key aspects of this, and if you have the Excel spreadsheet with you, you can follow that along with this video. So the first section is on finance. I think it's quite helpful to set this out in the way of a risk management sheet. So you'll see that we've put a column for severity and likelihood, followed by a column for mitigating actions. So the idea is to indicate things which could be a problem, how likely they are on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very likely and 1 being very unlikely, and then how severe will that have, what impact will that have on the business, 5 being a very severe impact and 1 being not very much impact at all. So you could have something which is very severe but very unlikely, or something which is very likely but not very severe, and so on. Permutations are endless. So that's how it works. So looking firstly at the section on finance. The first aspect to look at is your income or your revenue, the money that comes into your business from the sale of goods and services. Is that likely to be impacted by the current crisis, either for good or for bad? If the impact is not much at all, then you'd be putting severity as a 1. If the impact is quite a lot, either good or bad, you'd be putting a 5. So it could be that your income has shot up as a result of the current crisis. We have a number of businesses we're advising where that's the case. If you're in the food industry perhaps, just as an example, you may find there's a huge demand for your business, very much like the supermarkets are experiencing. So it's a severe impact, it's very likely, and what are you actually going to do about that? Are you going to recruit more staff, for example, if your income has gone up? How are you going to recruit those staff? Where are you going to find them? That kind of thing. If, on the other hand, your income has been cut as a result of the current crisis, then what are you actually going to do about that? How are you going to cut costs? What costs are you going to cut? Might be getting government support of some kind. If so, what kind of support will you actually be getting? Which are you going to make applications for? Then we could look at expenditure. So you're looking at expenditure, impact on expenditure. Is your expenditure going to go up as a result of what's happening, down, or stay the same? And what are you going to do about that? Are there mitigating actions you can take to cut expenditure? So what things can you cut, how much, and so forth? How can you balance the books? The idea of this plan is to get as close as you can, of course, to income and expenditure matching so that you haven't got a deficit. Now I know for some businesses that won't be possible, and that's why the government help is here in the shape of the interest-free loans and in the shape of the furloughing of staff and claiming back the staff costs, as well as the business rate reductions that are available as well. The next one is you might need to make new investments to get through the crisis. You might need to invest in special equipment to get through, and if so, how much money is that going to cost, and what are you going to do about that? Change to your banking arrangements. Are you going to need to apply for increased overdrafts? Is that likely, unlikely, etc.? And what would you do about that? How much would you need? And your business interruption insurance, if you have it. Have you had a good look at the policy to see what's covered and what isn't? And whether or not you can make arrangements to get payment from your insurance company, talk to them and see what's available. And have you got an up-to-date business plan? So that's really the other video is focusing on, getting your business plan, your main business plan in place, because all lenders, all investors, anybody that's going to help you will want to see that. Then we move on to customers and markets. So what are you actually going to be doing with that? Is the current crisis going to have an impact on your order book? And is that going to be temporary or is that going to be permanent? So for example, if you're in the hospitality industry or a hotel or a pub perhaps, then the likelihood is that income cut will be permanent, People aren't going to come back and book lots and lots of meals that they missed out on during the difficult times. So that income is lost for good. On the other hand, it's just deferred perhaps. So someone was going to put new windows in their house. They're still going to put the new windows in. It's just they're not going to do them until a few months' time rather than now. So looking at that. Change to your channel mix. So for example, you might be doing more online business and less face-to-face business, or someone with your customers direct. You might find, as the retailers are, for example, a lot of their business is moving online rather than retail. So is the mix of your normal business being changed as a result of the current crisis? And if so, what can you do about that? What are your plans to actually adjust your business to cope with that additional demand down certain channels? International trade. So if you trade with customers overseas, is that being impacted by all the restrictions that are currently in place? If so, again, is that a temporary arrangement, a temporary problem, or is it a more permanent problem? And what are you actually going to do about that, depending on what it is? Supply chain. It could be that your supply chain is impacted. You can't get the things that you wanted as quickly. Can you change suppliers? Can you put new arrangements in place? What are you actually going to do about that? Is it just a question of delayed orders, in which case communicate with customers and explain that their order will be delayed because you need to get your raw materials in? So just making really clear what you're going to do about any supply chain issues. And then something we're focusing on hugely at the moment is, what are you doing about the upturn? So most economists believe that we will experience a very severe downturn over the course of the next 2 or 3 months because of the lockdown that's in place. But we could experience a very, very steep incline when we come out of it. So lots of purchases that have been put on hold but not cancelled. And the demand could rise dramatically at some point down the line. And you could find you go from famine to feast. And how are you planning for that? How can you plan for that? Can you plan your staffing for that? Can you plan your all your operations so that you can take advantage of the upturn when it comes and you don't end up missing out on those opportunities because you haven't got capacity? Can you build capacity while the downturn's on so that you're ready for the upturn when it comes? The businesses that will do well are those that plan well for the upturn and don't get so distracted with the current situation, difficult though it is, but that plan and are ready to take advantage when the upturn comes. We're saying if you have any lending at all, try to go for a fixed rate at the moment, because interest rates at the moment are historically very, very low, and so some great rates are around. If we do experience a rapid upturn, that's likely to lead to price rises and therefore inflation, and potentially therefore higher interest rates. So if your lending is on a flexible rate, you may find it's cheap at the moment, but could get very expensive in the future. So do have a good look at fixed rates. You'll make your own decision about whether that's the right thing to do, but our advice would be to think very seriously about a fixed rate loan as opposed to one that moves with interest rates. So the next section we're going to be looking at is people. So the first thing is, how many people do you need in the business to get through this period of downturn? Do you need the same number of people? Business hasn't really changed an awful lot. Do you need more people? Do you need less people? Or do you need people doing different jobs and you need to retrain them perhaps? Might be if everything's going online, you need to retrain and move people. But if you need to lay people off, making use of the government's furloughing scheme, if that's at all possible. So they'll pay 80% of the wages of those staff that are put on furlough, up to a maximum of £2,500 a month. So that does include the national insurance and other on costs, but they do need to be off work and not working. There's still some detail, as at the point of making this video, which we will circulate subsequently, about can you put people on and off furlough and that kind of thing. Is it flexible? At the moment it doesn't look very flexible, but we might find some flexibility comes, which makes that a lot more useful to a lot more businesses. So we really hope that it does, and we've asked Cabinet Office to look seriously at making it more flexible. So for example, you need 10 staff instead of 20, you put 10 on furlough, but what happens if 4 of your 10 that you've kept need to go sick or are isolated, can you bring 6 of the ones you've put on furlough back into the business to cover? At the moment, we're not sure. The government guidance isn't clear, but we hope it will be in the not too distant future. But those are all matters to consider. Potential staff absences and how you're going to cover for those if people are off sick. Will the impact of the virus have an impact on your customer behaviour, either in the short term or in the long term? So we believe, as I'm sure is fairly obvious really, that some changes to behaviour will be long lasting. When we get back to what we'd think of as normal, some things will go back to how they were and some things may change for the long term. Is that likely to be the case for your business? So think about that really carefully. Are the changes people are going to have to make during this period likely to last? And if so, what's the impact on your business and how do you potentially react and change your business practices in the light of those changes in behaviour? The need for more digital information is going to be very important, I think, during this period certainly. Getting information to clients that you'd normally do in a face-to-face meeting or some other way is now going to have to be digital. So how are you going to gear up for that? Have you got the digital technology in place to enable you to do it? And if not, can you get it? How quickly? And what's it going to cost? And what about leadership? So leading the company through the difficulties. So 2 sides to that. Managing the people, keeping them motivated and supporting them through the difficult time, but also supporting yourself and your own mental health and well-being. We've got a number of partners who will help with that free of charge at the moment due to the difficulties. So that's well worth looking at, to think about. Mental well-being is equally as important as physical well-being during these very, very difficult times. And then moving on to IT. So is your IT all working? Does it allow remote working? Does it support the business in its changed environment? Or do you need to make changes? Do you need help with that? Do you need somebody to come and advise on that? Impact on processes and the need for changes to your systems, and the whole point about home working, of course, but processes, do they need to change during this current period? And if so, how? And what impact is that going to have on the business? And the risk of systems breakdowns and what that would do to your business if systems collapsed. Have you got the procedures and processes and support in place to rectify that quickly and get back to normal? And then your premises. Are the premises going to be adequate during the current period? And will they be adequate for the upturn? So those sorts of things to think about. Can you pay the rent? We've heard from government in the last few days that commercial landlords have been encouraged not to evict their tenants if they can't pay their rent. So likely to be some kind of payment holidays. That may help matters, but best to discuss it with the landlord. But looking at premises, and maybe there's opportunities if you're in a suitable financial position to pick up premises at very preferential terms just at the moment, because the market's incredibly flat. Landlords might be willing to give you those extra the extra space you need, or new premises at a very attractive terms due to the current difficulties. So well worth thinking about those sorts of things. So there we are. Those are the key points really to work through. There are others. We're very, very happy to help with completing this exercise. So do contact us by phone if you'd like to do that on 01225 355 553, and someone will be pleased to help you with that. Or alternatively, you can contact us by email, team@inspirebeers.co.uk, or any other means that you like to get hold of us other than face-to-face, which is obviously very difficult just at the moment. So putting the 2 things together, a really robust business plan along with a contingency plan for the current situation, should put you in a strong position to get lending or other finance into your business. But please do ask us if you need further help. Thank you very much and best wishes.